Do you call yourself a feminist even though you couldn't befriend a woman to literally save your life? Do you hate Shakespeare? And also the Scottish? Then Lady Macbeth is the book for you. It's not a good book, mind you, but boy is it struggling to be. As the title suggests, Ava Reid reimagines the story of the play from the point of view of Lady Macbeth. And by reimagine, I do mean massacre. Look at how they reimagined my girl. For one, the book starts off with a backstory for Lady Macbeth, who Ava Reid establishes is named Roseal. And also, she has magical powers now. For you see, Roseal can look into any man's eyes and make him act out her orders. Basically, she has the Imperious curse on lock, but only if she isn't wearing her veil. Despite that, Roseal is being arranged married off to the Scottish brute. She and her handmaiden arrive at Glamis for the wedding. Arrive from where? Not Scotland, because Ava Reid additionally establishes Roseal to be the illegitimate daughter of a French duke, Alan II, or Rybeard. Not infrequently, we revisit the structure of Rybeard's court throughout the story, and that could be fine. I love historical fiction. Some of my favorite authors pepper stretches of what basically amounts to fun facts into their story. Let's call it historian catnip, an indulgence on the part of the writer getting to show off all their research, as they should. Passion and respect for a time period and place are the groundwork for great stories. But if this applies, then Ava Reid is passionate about France, because Rybeard and Macbeth are separated by the sea, and also at least 50 years of linear time, and Lady Macbeth, being a foreigner in the first place, isn't really supported by the original play or history. In fact, Wikipedia states quite confidently that Lady Macbeth in the play was based off of Grouch Macbeth, the Scottish daughter of a Scottish guy. So why do this? Today's theme. Roseal and her handmaiden arrive at Glamis, upon which they are separated immediately. For you see, Scottish brutes apparently forbid their women from having servants, and also setting foot in the entire castle complex. There are no bards or draught tiles, and, Roseal realizes with a shocked inhale, no women. What? Okay. I'm no expert on early medieval Scottish culture, but Ava Reid is a writer who devotes many words to how unfair the setting is towards women. Addressing this is basically the stated goal of the book, giving her a voice, a past, and a power that transforms the story men have written for her. And you know what? I'm in favor of that. But how does the ultra-patriarchy that Reid keeps describing mesh with a place in which men apparently do all the work that could traditionally be considered a woman's task? The sewing, the cooking, the cleaning. Because we have to assume that that's the case if there aren't even any female servants, which Reid establishes there are not. Whatever. Intimidated by this harsh new place and her sudden loneliness, Roseal is terrified of her warrior husband. And when the time for wedding night activities comes, she delays them by demanding 3 wishes of Macbeth, like he's a Slavic goldfish. Her first is a golden necklace inlaid with ruby, and by making that wish, she maneuvers Macbeth into a war for territory, because there are no precious metals in his domain. This is supposed to show how clever she is for having made that connection and temporarily getting rid of him, but keep in mind that Macbeth is continually being characterized as warlike and bloodthirsty anyway, and that if he didn't choose the warpath here, a handful of gold might as well be found somewhere in his domain, or, you know, traded for. A win is a win. Before he leaves, he shows Roseal to the basement, and we find out that the 3 witches from the original play are chained up down there, doing laundry forever. This is not really of consequence yet. Macbeth leaves. In his absence, Roseal tries to strike up an alliance with Fleance, the son of Banquo. He's mad that he was left behind instead of joining the fighting, and Roseal offers to wound him and make it look like he saved her from attackers. I will say that I do not get her reasoning at all. I understand that Reid wants to keep her cast limited to characters from the original play, But why Fleance? This boy is aggressively useless. At the very least, my predictions are confirmed. He remains pathetic until he dies, and he never helps Rosil whatsoever. Hope it was worth lying about treason to your unsettling warrior husband. For now, he buys it. Upon his victorious return, he puts the necklace around her in an elegantly subtle metaphor for chaining her, and Rosil's second wish is a cloak made from 6 different white animals of Scotland. Peeta is putting out a hit on her. Macbeth accepts the task, but when they pay the laundry witches another visit, we finally get one of the play's original prophecies. Macbeth will be king. This is thrilling news, especially since King Duncan is on his way to Glamis with his sons Evander and Lysander, and he is... He's very handsome, tall but not bulky. When he does move, there is a stunning grace to his limbs that makes Rosil think of the Capeluis, the water horse that takes the form of a man and seduces maidens to follow him into the drowning drink. If the serpent woman Melusina had a mate, it would be such a creature, she thinks. The prince's hair is black and shines like the sea under moonlight. It is a beauty that would be well appreciated and praised. It is strange to look at skin so immaculate after spending weeks of features are fine, almost as delicate. In a way, men usually are not. If it wasn't abundantly clear what couple we were supposed to be rooting for, it is now. And you know what? I like this idea. If I remember correctly, in the original play, Lady Macbeth dies off screen, so we're only told that she's dead secondhand. And that, of course, gives you a lot of room for creativity as an author. Maybe she secretly ran away with Lysander. Maybe they were planning it all along. But no, I was wrong. Ava Reid said, "F*** that play, and f*** history too," because this is where we get some more independent retconning. We find out that Macbeth had a first wife before Rosil, who was also vaguely witchy and disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Much later in the book, we find out, shit you not, that the first Lady Macbeth, whose name is Grouch, is one of the witches Macbeth is making do laundry forever. In actuality, it was Grouch who had 2 husbands, one of which died, leaving her to get with Macbeth, a marriage into which she brought a son who History Macbeth seems to have accepted as his own. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but this version of Lady Macbeth is 17 years old, which we have grounds to assume is also a deviation from the play. So why? Why make either Ladies Macbeth these helpless victims of their husband instead of arguably the instigator of a violent coup? Why reduce the woman who literally coined the phrase "screw your courage to the sticking place" to a cowering teenager putting all of her energy towards evading Macbeth and a defeated victim chained up in his basement at the same time? Why? Why rob Lady Macbeth of her fierce ambition, her strongest character trait in a #feminist #girlboss story? Or was that also an invention by the men that needed correcting? Apparently so, because in the book, Macbeth orders Rosil to go kill Duncan using her imperious eyes. She's unsure of this because she's only ever used her powers once. At her father's court, she took an interest in a stable boy. She eventually went to kiss him, and the implication is that she used her eyes to make him kiss her back, which is a bit weird because there doesn't seem to be any visible effect of her eyes taking command of someone. No sparkles, no colorful spiral pattern. So I guess what I'm saying is that if I were a hot French teen and I kissed a guy and he was kissing me back, I might just assume that he was doing that because he wanted to, but Rosil doesn't seem to entertain that possibility, and neither does anyone else, which does carry some nasty implications. But don't worry, it goes no further, because he's executed immediately. But Rosil doesn't run into any trouble. She looks into the guards' eyes and makes them kill Duncan and then each other. This is implied to be basically effortless for her. Remember that for later. And with him dead, Macbeth's coup starts for real. In front of the princess, he keeps up a veneer of servitude, but his plan is to split them up, leaving Lysander at the castle for Rosil to deal with, while he goes off to handle Evander, the younger prince. Both Lord and Lady Macbeth fail hard, although Macbeth probably doesn't start making out with Evander on sight. That's right, Rosil is after that twink. And even though she does have a knife with her, it doesn't really read like she's playing into some master plan when he starts going down on her. But nothing more comes of this meeting because it turns out that she failed to enchant Lysander, and he finds her knife. Although I want to point out that the way this scene is written kind of implies that she was under the impression he was under her spell. Again, because there's no visible effect, Rosil is suddenly overcome by a novel humiliation. The last moments play over in her mind. Her falling wantonly into his arms, him pressing her into the bed and kissing her breathless, all while she believed he was under her lustful spell. He had not truly been ensorcelled, and those passionate words that had inflamed her were spoken under false pretense. Oh! So this girl is just a full predator then. This book. So we're told Lysander's not fully human, because if he were, he'd be defenseless against her. If you didn't read the book, place your bets now as to what that means. Really, tell me in the comments what you'd guess what the reveal is gonna be. Because I sure couldn't. Macbeth returns, imprisons Lysander, and heads out again to hunt down his brother. He leaves behind Banquo and Fleance with Rosil and tasks her with torturing somewhat nebulous information out of Lysander. I have no idea what he'd know that would help them in any way. Rosil refuses to do this for a suspiciously long time. When Banquo finally pressures her to go down into the dungeon, she puts herself between Lysander and the two men. And Rosil's allegiance to Lysander is something that I want to look at for a sec, because she's so down bad for this man, she's willing to do basically anything for him. Even though he told her that he's not afraid of getting tortured because he doesn't feel pain as other men do. So why? Why is Rosil this self-sacrificial? Why is she willing to risk her safety and the trust of her now countrymen for a man she barely knows? She and Lysander do share a small handful of scenes, in many of which they don't even properly interact, they just kind of lyrically eye fuck. There is one strong one in which he dissuades her from jumping to her death, which is good, obviously, but we can kind of assume that Macbeth would also not want her to kill herself. Macbeth is rude in this novel. He's abusive, constricting, evil. But most of that comes to the surface later in their marriage, and a lot of it isn't framed as out of the ordinary. Rosil has no reason to assume that Lysander is any better. He tells her that he'll help her if Macbeth is hurting her, which I'm sure is very dreamy, but he's the crown prince, and at that point Duncan is still alive, so it wouldn't even be that much of an effort for Lysander to order Macbeth to knock it off, which he never even ends up doing, and still Rosil grows intensely loyal to him over a super short time, and by their fourth encounter, they start getting it on. Well, I guess in her mind she's puppeteering him into second base, even though avoiding being touched by her husband is basically Rosil's main motivation for most of the book. And this does some damage to her as a character, because we are constantly told that Rosil is shrewd and intelligent, the clever Ermine. But then she allies herself with a random stranger for no reason other than attraction, which makes sense for a teenager, but is not clever. A clever woman with a strong sense of self-preservation would likely try to align herself with the powerful guy she's already with, or at least not risk his wrath by openly preferring his prisoner, who is useless to her. Repeating over and over that a character is smart in narration and then making them do something deeply illogical is bad, even for romance reasons, because making Rosil take stupid risks for a man she barely knows is not just not very #girlboss, #feminist of her, but it also highlights how juvenile this character is, which only makes the choice to age her down more infuriating. Thankfully, some part of Ava Reid seems to have understood this, because at least the world remains internally consistent and punishes Rosil for this immediately. When she tries to provoke Banquo by telling him that she and Fleance staged the attack, they overpower her and flay her legs, which is horrible and disproportionate, obviously, but at least Roseal's open attachment to their anemic war prisoner has a consequence. Speaking of which, it's time for the Lysander payoff! And boy is it a payoff, because it is transforming time. For you see, Lysander is a secret were-dragon. We learn that in the 2 days he's been imprisoned, he's forcibly kept himself awake, and that whenever he falls asleep, he turns into a huge wild dragon. So wild, in fact, that a few pages later, after he busts himself out of the castle, he admits this to Roseal. "Perhaps you will flee after I confess this," he says, hoarse, tormented. "I did not leave you alone in that dungeon because I wished to abandon you in your suffering. I feared that the creature might inflict upon you a worse fate than what you had already endured. I wanted you in the manner a man desires a woman, yet cloaked within the dangerous glamour of claws and teeth." Okay, so Macbeth is displeased to find Lysander gone. He didn't have more luck with Evander, and he got injured in the fighting, but he brings back the cloak that Roseal requested, and in his anger he doesn't grant her a third wish. The morning after, Roseal wanders around in pain, feeling defeated and miserable, but she comes upon Dragon Lysander, who was apparently hiding in the pool right next to the castle, which nobody took note of at all. He changes back into twink form. The two of them sleep together, but they can't stay together. Roseal has to return and he has to flee. So back in the castle, Roseal goes down to the witches and thinks to talk to them for the very first time. #feminist. She asks them for a false prophecy, and the next time Macbeth visits them for guidance, they tell him that Banquo and his kids mean trouble. And let me just say, I love this. Obviously, those aren't the circumstances in which the prophecy is relayed in the play, and it makes a lot less sense that Macbeth imprisons Fleance in this version for a good long while, instead of offing him then and there. But I love this spin on the prophecy. This was smart. It's followed by a whole lot of nothing happening for a while. Macbeth is fighting and losing, but he also gets that prophecy about not being killed by a man of woman born, and that he won't die unless the forest comes up the hill. So he's in somewhat higher spirits, but he is growing more paranoid by the day. And finally, he goes to speak with Fleance in his cell, who alleges to him that Roseal slept with Lysander. This convinces Macbeth that she must be carrying Lysander's child, which makes him lock her in the basement with the other witches. Now, this is the stupidest plot point in the entire book. It really is. Because as we keep going through painful lengths to establish, this is the olden days, in which there is little science, little medicine, and even less #feminism. So here and now, a woman's virginity is believed to be hinging on her hymen being intact, right? Roseal herself refers to this all the time. She keeps using the phrase bloodied sheets and bloodied thighs as a placeholder for losing her virginity. So this is in fact the assumption of the time. But when Macbeth sleeps with Roseal for the first time, Ava Reid again makes it very clear that that makes her bleed. And after that, no one knows that Lysander is just chilling next to the castle. No one ever sees him. So in his mind, Macbeth should have a 100% guarantee that he's the first and only person to ever sleep with Roseal. It doesn't matter that he's getting paranoid. There is no way he should believe his prophetically antagonized prisoner over a phenomenon he would assume is biological fact. How do you ignore the logic of the world that you built so profoundly as a writer, especially if it's meant to have huge consequences for the plot? And it just keeps going downhill from there, because locked in with the other witches, they and Roseal bundle the power of #feminism and imbue Roseal with all their collective magic. I think it's kind of vague what actually happens, but she has the strength of 4 women in her now, so she absorbed them, but also they explicitly stay behind when she leaves the basement. I don't know. Outside, the battle has reached the castle. Roseal encounters Fleance, who is still alive for some reason. "You are not dead, nor are you." Fleance steps closer. Macbeth freed me on the condition that I fight for him. He knew he would need every man at his side. That'll make a difference. She fails to use her power on him, which, can I just say, is a grating running gag throughout this book, and it's not for a lack of trying. Rosil manages to enchant people exactly 2 times, when she's killing Duncan and a little bit from now, but somehow men keep covering her eyes or keep her from lifting her veil up over and over, which you'd think was something to grow vigilant about after, like, the first time it happens. I don't even think the man has to meet her eyes. She just has to look into his. How do you continue to fuck that up 3 separate times just with Fleon specifically? Keep 1 step between yourself and the prison bars, you idiot! God. Not to worry though, because Rosil's man is here to save her.
And feminism marches on.
Dragon Lysander shreds Fleance as Rosil has an epiphany. Its thick tail is banded with thorns. Between its claws are weeds that it has ripped up from the earth. The underside of its enormous body is slicked with mud, lily pads and petals pasted on, and clinging to various scutes and appendages are tendrils of vines, sticky pine needles, and fragile ferns, as if it had just wrested itself free from a large thicket. Moss drips from the peaks of its wings. For weeks the creature has twisted in some distant forest, hiding itself among the oily shadows and the darkest leaves. It has taken this dark matter with it, and as the dragon lowers itself into the courtyard, the words of the prophecy fall into place like a key in a lock. The wood has come upon the hill. So, in case you didn't read the play, here's how those prophecies from earlier originally come true. A man not of woman born refers to a guy born by C-section, and the forest coming upon the hill is the advancing army carrying branches for what I'm sure was some great reason. But it was, you know, a reason. There is a canon explanation for these prophetic demands in the play. What Ava Reid is implying in her version is that Lysander twisting for weeks in some distant forest warrants enough debris to also fulfill the prophecy, except no, he didn't. No, he didn't. The dragon was not twisting for weeks in some distant forest, because it's not around 24/7. Ava Reid made it clear that the dragon comes out when Lysander would be asleep. He stayed at the castle before all of this went down, so we know for a fact that he turns back into a human when he'd wake up. The dragon can't have the debris of weeks on it. It has the debris of 8 hours tops. Why do I do this to myself? Oh, that's right, content. The 2 of them kiss. Even the dragon knows your face, your voice. If such a creature has any desire greater than blood, it is to protect you. Oh, my bad, I thought another desire of such a creature greater than blood was to Seems like I misread that interaction. So Rosil challenges Macbeth. He doesn't believe he can be killed. He discourages her from trying. And this is her thought process in response to this. Her beauty was strange enough to make men shiver, but she never compelled, enchanted, or ensorcelled. It was just the stable boy, and could his own lust not have moved him? Then there were Duncan's guards, but there she had acted only at Macbeth's direction. Her magic blooming only at the cultivation of men. Could it be so? Truly? The final standoff against the main antagonist, after you spirit fused with 3 honest-to-God witches, is perfect for asking yourself this for the very first time. Anyway, Rosil, Thanos dissolves Macbeth. Is the ability to... I'm done here. So, why Lady Macbeth? That is my only question worth asking, because nothing in this book indicates that Ava Reid had any strong feelings about the play at all. Any plans, any ideas for expansion. The plot is harshly overhauled. If you changed the characters' names and gave me this book to read without any further context, I might say it references Macbeth, but that's really as far as I'd go. I'd like to point out that the play mentions very specifically that Lady Macbeth has given birth before in one of the most metal sections of any Shakespeare play I've ever read, and that combined with her seemingly comfortable home life and good rapport with her husband doesn't really indicate that she's ever suffered abuse at his hands. So if you're an author and you want to take a stance on behalf of a character, but that requires you to invent a story in which that character is constantly victimized, maybe choose another character? Last time I checked, we didn't have a shortage of disadvantaged women in literature. Lady Macbeth doesn't retell Shakespeare so much as slice cleanly through it, revealing what was hidden beneath. I couldn't look away. Why, is a car crash hidden beneath Alex? In all seriousness, the only answer I came up with is name recognition. This novel is more than what you get by calling something Lady Ophelia from Hamlet the play, because obviously the name Macbeth is associated with Shakespeare already, and with feminist retellings as popular as they are right now, I can imagine that even people who never saw or read the original play would be interested in Ava Reid's twist on it. What they don't know is that it's just not a twist. It's a wildly different story, and between you and me, I wouldn't even insist on feminist, which there is a number of reasons for. This is how Ava Reid introduces the book on Goodreads. The result is, I hope, a vivid portrait of a complex young woman, an irrepressibly feminist novel about the entrenched, multifold violence of patriarchy, a darkly magical gothic mystery, and a romance with the wit and marvel of medieval verse. All of this may seem elaborate, enigmatic, or perhaps contradictory, but is that not the legacy of Lady Macbeth herself? Which frankly is a wild justification for your writing being contradictory, but okay. This book is about the entrenched, multifold violence of patriarchy, except it's not. There is one character who experiences systemic oppression, and it's not Roseal. It's her second handmaiden, who she's allowed to have the 60% mark of the book. I haven't mentioned her yet because she doesn't do anything ever. Like, I'm not even sure if she relays messages or fetches objects, like the most basic side character activities. She could be left out of the story completely and it wouldn't make a butterfly wing beat of a difference. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that she's only there because some editor told Reid that ahistorically banishing all women aside from your protagonist from the narrative maybe isn't good for the feminism book. So how is Roseal suffering under the patriarchy shown to us? By not being allowed a body servant for a while, being made to delete her husband's guest, getting the whipped out of her by some attendant. These are all injustices made possible by sexism, but they are not typical of sexism. They're not relatable to women who experience sexism, neither today nor in the past. They're not systemic. They sure are not deeply entrenched. So what even is Ava Reid critiquing? We already established that it's not the original play or history, so why? What is the point of any of this? This feels so unproductive and mean to say, but I genuinely think that Ava Reid might not have a lot of thoughts on irrepressible feminism worth sharing, because this is some of the clumsiest social commentary I've seen in a long time. Take this next passage, for example, where Roseal contemplates the ethics of having sicked Macbeth on some unsuspecting neighboring lord. Roseal consoles herself that most of those who will die are men, and how many of them have their own unwilling, unloved wives at home? How many of them have forced servant girls, even their own daughters? But one campaign will not end these abuses. The world will always birth more men and more women for them to claim. It would take power beyond which any human might possess to rearrange the natural order of the world. Huh? So first of all, that's not true. War is famously hard on women. What kind of dream logic are we using to pretend that Roseal means for this to be a net positive for women somehow? Like, girl, what even is the thesis of this thought? What is feminist about this? The concept of a lot of men dying? What, did Ava Reid do gender studies on 4chan? I do not think Lady Macbeth is a very good book, but I guess I'm making a habit of whining about sexism, aren't I? I'm sure there were lots of people who were down with this. I mean, someone must have read the OG play and thought to themselves, You know what this needs? An underaged version of this woman. Threatening false assault allegation.